Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Wayne Fry had built his empire from nothing. At 42, he owned 3 successful construction companies across Texas, each one a testament to his relentless work ethic and strategic mind. His weathered hands bore the scars of his early days swinging hammers. But now those same hands signed million-dollar contracts and orchestrated complex business deals with surgical precision. The Fry family compound sat on 50 acres outside Austin, a monument to Wayne's success. The main house, where he lived with his wife Sarah and their 2 children, commanded a view of rolling hills and oak trees. 2 smaller houses on the property housed his sister Rebecca and her 8-year-old son Tommy, along with his elderly parents. Wayne had always believed family came first, a belief that would soon be tested beyond its limits. Sarah Fry, 38 and still striking with her auburn hair and green eyes, had married Wayne 15 years ago when he was just a promising contractor with big dreams. She'd stood by him through the lean years, managing his books and entertaining clients. But success had changed her. As Wayne's wealth grew, so did her taste for luxury and her dissatisfaction with their quiet life. The cracks in their marriage had been subtle at first. Sarah's increasing absences, her new interest in yoga classes that seemed to run later each week, her sudden fascination with her appearance after years of comfortable domesticity. Wayne, consumed with expanding his business empire, had initially attributed these changes to natural evolution. It was their 16-year-old daughter Emma who first voiced suspicions. "Dad, Mom's been acting weird," she'd said one evening as they worked together in Wayne's workshop. Emma had inherited her father's analytical mind and his distrust of convenient explanations. "She's been getting texts at all hours and hiding her phone." Wayne's 14-year-old son Jake, more interested in video games than family drama, had nevertheless noticed patterns. "Mom's car smells different," he'd mentioned casually, "like some guy's cologne." Wayne had dismissed these observations initially, but his construction background had taught him that small cracks eventually bring down entire structures. He began paying attention, and what he discovered would reshape everything he thought he knew about loyalty and betrayal. The revelation came on a Tuesday evening in March. Wayne had returned early from a job site in Houston to find Sarah's car gone and a note claiming she was at her book club. But Wayne knew the book club met on Thursdays. He'd been receiving the calendar invitations for months. A quick drive past the community center confirmed his suspicions. The parking lot was empty. Wayne Fry was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. He'd grown up in East Austin when it was still rough, had fought his way through high school while working construction jobs, and had learned early that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. These lessons had served him well in business, but he'd allowed himself to believe that marriage was different, that family was sacred. That night, he made a decision that would define everything that followed. He wouldn't confront Sarah immediately. Instead, he would gather information, build his case with the same methodical approach he used to plan construction projects. Wayne Fry believed in preparation, in having all the facts before making any move. It was a principle that had made him wealthy, and now it would serve a darker purpose. Chapter 2. Blueprints of Betrayal. The investigation began the next morning. Wayne had resources most betrayed husbands could only dream of, a network of contractors, suppliers, and workers throughout Central Texas who owed him favors. More importantly, he had Roberto Childs, his head of security and oldest friend, who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before joining Wayne's organization. "I need you to handle something delicate," Wayne told Roberto over coffee in his office, the morning sun casting long shadows across blueprints and contracts. "Sarah's been lying about where she goes. I need to know the truth." Roberto's scarred face remained impassive. He'd been with Wayne for 8 years, had seen him weather business crises and family challenges with equal stoicism. But there was something different in Wayne's voice now, a coldness that Roberto recognized from their days in the military. "You want surveillance?" Roberto asked. "Complete picture. Where she goes, who she meets, how long this has been going on. Everything." Within a week, Roberto had assembled a comprehensive dossier. Sarah had been meeting Dr. Cameron Springer, a cardiologist at Austin Heart Institute, for the past 6 months. The affair had begun innocuously enough. Sarah had been a patient after experiencing chest pains that turned out to be anxiety-related. But Dr. Springer, recently divorced and charming in the way that came naturally to successful surgeons, had seen an opportunity. The surveillance photos were damning. Sarah and Cameron at expensive restaurants Wayne had never been to, holding hands across candlelit tables. Sarah and Cameron entering a downtown condo that Roberto's research revealed was Cameron's newly purchased bachelor pad. Sarah and Cameron at medical conferences in Dallas and San Antonio, conferences that coincided with Sarah's supposed visits to her college friends. But it was the financial records that truly enraged Wayne. Sarah had been using their joint accounts to fund the affair. Expensive dinners, weekend getaways, even gifts for Cameron that included a Rolex watch Wayne's money had purchased. She'd been stealing from him to finance her betrayal, using his success to fund his humiliation. "There's more," Roberto said during their final briefing, sliding a folder across Wayne's mahogany desk. "Springer's got a reputation. This isn't his first affair with a married patient. Hospital gossip suggests he's done this before, targets wealthy wives specifically." Wayne studied the surveillance photos with the same intensity he brought to construction plans. In his mind, he was already building something, not a structure of wood and steel, but a plan of retribution that would be just as carefully engineered and far more devastating. "What do you want me to do?" Roberto asked. Wayne was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the desk in a rhythm Roberto had learned to fear. When Wayne finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I want you to start mapping their routines. Every place they go, every person they see, every habit they have. I want to know their world better than they do." Wayne's eyes, usually warm when discussing family, had turned cold as winter steel. "And Roberto? Start looking into Dr. Springer's background. Everything. I have a feeling a man who preys on vulnerable women might have other secrets worth discovering." As Roberto left to begin his deeper investigation, Wayne stood at his office window, looking out at the construction site where his newest project was taking shape. 30 stories of glass and steel rising from what had been empty ground just months ago. It was a testament to Wayne's philosophy. With enough planning, enough resources, and enough determination, you could build anything, even revenge. Chapter 3: The Architect's Gambit. 3 weeks into his investigation, Wayne had assembled a complete picture of his wife's betrayal and her lover's patterns. But it was what Roberto discovered about Dr. Cameron Springer's past that transformed Wayne's anger into something far more dangerous. Calculated fury with a specific target. Cameron Springer wasn't just a serial adulterer. He was a predator with a method. Roberto's contacts in the medical community revealed a pattern stretching back 5 years. Cameron systematically targeted wives of wealthy men, using his position and charm to initiate affairs that he then leveraged for financial gain. 2 previous relationships had ended with substantial loans that were never repaid, and one former lover had quietly transferred ownership of a valuable property to Cameron before her husband discovered the affair. "He's running a long-term con," Roberto explained, spreading financial documents across Wayne's conference table. "Uses the affairs to establish emotional dependence, then gradually convinces these women to help him with temporary financial problems or investment opportunities. By the time their husbands catch on, he's moved to the next target." Wayne examined the evidence with growing admiration for Cameron's strategy, even as his hatred deepened. Here was a man who understood leverage, who planned his moves years in advance. In different circumstances, Wayne might have respected such methodical manipulation. But Cameron had made a critical error. He'd targeted the wrong family. "What's Sarah given him so far?" Wayne asked. "Nothing major yet, but there are signs he's moving into phase 2. She's been asking questions about your business assets, your investment accounts. Last week, she mentioned to him that you're considering buying property in Costa Rica. Information that could only have come from our private conversations." Wayne's jaw tightened. Sarah wasn't just betraying their marriage. She was preparing to betray everything he'd built. The Costa Rica property was part of his long-term estate planning, a detail he'd shared with her in confidence while discussing their children's future. To see that intimate trust weaponized against him was more than infidelity. It was an act of war. But Wayne Fry hadn't become wealthy by reacting emotionally to threats. Instead, he began designing the most complex project of his career, a trap so elaborate and devastating that both Sarah and Cameron would destroy themselves attempting to escape it. The plan began with Greg Davies, Wayne's youngest brother and the black sheep of the Fry family. Greg had always been brilliant but unfocused, bouncing between failed startups and get-rich-quick schemes. Most recently, he'd been developing a cryptocurrency trading platform that existed more in theory than practice. Wayne had consistently refused to invest, considering Greg's ventures too risky and poorly planned. "I want you to call Sarah," Wayne instructed Greg during a private meeting at a downtown restaurant. "Tell her you finally got a legitimate business opportunity, something revolutionary in the crypto space. Make it sound like the ground floor of the next Bitcoin." Greg's eyes lit up with confusion and hope. "Wayne, you've never believed in my projects before. What's changed?" "Maybe I've been too conservative," Wayne replied, his tone carefully modulated to suggest reluctant admission. "But I need absolute discretion. This stays between family until I'm ready to make it public." Over the next 2 weeks, Greg played his role perfectly. He reached out to Sarah with nervous excitement, explaining that he'd developed an AI-driven cryptocurrency trading algorithm that could predict market movements with unprecedented accuracy. The technology was real. Greg had been working on it for months, but it was also deeply flawed and nowhere near ready for investment. Sarah took the bait exactly as Wayne had predicted. She peppered Greg with questions about potential returns, investment minimums, and timeline to profitability. When Greg mentioned that Wayne was considering a substantial family investment but wanted to keep it quiet for tax reasons, Sarah's interest intensified dramatically. Within a week, she'd arranged for Cameron to accidentally meet Greg at a coffee shop near the hospital. The introduction appeared natural. Sarah simply mentioned that her brother-in-law was developing something exciting in the tech space. And wouldn't it be interesting if Cameron met him? Wayne watched the pieces fall into place with the satisfaction of an architect seeing his blueprints come to life. Cameron, predictably, was intrigued by the opportunity to access Wayne's wealth through a seemingly innocent investment. Greg, believing he was finally getting family support for his venture, enthusiastically pitched his half-developed algorithm. But Wayne's true masterstroke was yet to come. He'd designed this opening gambit not just to expose their greed, but to create the perfect conditions for their destruction. Because what Sarah and Cameron didn't know was that Wayne had been planning this moment from the day he'd first suspected her betrayal. As spring turned to summer, the stage was set for a drama that would test every relationship in Wayne's life and prove that some betrayals carry consequences that echo far beyond the original sin. The foundation of Wayne's revenge was now poured and curing. Soon, it would be time to begin building something that would stand as a monument to his ruthlessness and a warning to anyone who might consider crossing him again. Chapter 4: The Rising Structure. By July, Wayne's elaborate trap was gaining momentum with the precision of a well-managed construction project. Sarah had become increasingly interested in Greg's cryptocurrency venture, asking probing questions about Wayne's involvement and the potential for early investment opportunities. She'd also grown bolder in her affair with Cameron, spending entire weekends away under increasingly flimsy pretenses. Wayne maintained his facade of the devoted husband with Oscar-worthy performance. He asked about her book club meetings, expressed concern when she claimed to be feeling ill on nights she was actually with Cameron, and even suggested they plan a second honeymoon for their upcoming anniversary. Each interaction was carefully calculated to give Sarah more rope with which to hang herself. The breakthrough came when Roberto discovered that Cameron had begun researching Wayne's business empire in detail. Hospital security footage showed Cameron accessing medical databases to pull information about other wealthy patients, while his internet search history revealed deep dives into Fry Construction's financial filings and property holdings. "He's profiling you like a target," Roberto reported during their weekly briefing. "This isn't just about Sarah anymore. He's planning something bigger." Wayne had anticipated this development. Men like Cameron were never satisfied with small victories. They always overreached, always pushed too far. It was a weakness Wayne intended to exploit ruthlessly. The next phase required Luke Higgins, Wayne's most trusted accountant and a man who'd helped structure every major deal in Wayne's portfolio. Luke had immigrated from Ireland 20 years earlier with advanced degrees in finance and a gift for creative problem-solving that skirted the edges of legality without crossing them. "I need you to create a shell company," Wayne instructed Luke during a private meeting in his home office. "Something that looks legitimate but has enough complexity to hide our true intentions." Luke's weathered face creased with concern. "Wayne, what are you planning? I've seen that look before. and it usually means someone's about to get hurt. Just trust me, Wayne replied. But I need this done perfectly. One mistake, and everything falls apart. Luke spent the next week constructing an intricate corporate structure centered around Fry Digital Ventures, a legitimate-looking investment firm specializing in emerging technologies. On paper, the company had substantial backing from Wayne's construction empire and was actively seeking revolutionary tech investments. In reality, it was a honeypot designed to attract exactly the kind of scheme Cameron and Sarah were planning. Meanwhile, Wayne's sister Rebecca had noticed changes in Sarah's behavior that went beyond typical marital problems. Rebecca, a former social worker with sharp instincts about human nature, had spent years observing family dynamics from her house on the compound. "Wayne, I don't know what's going on between you and Sarah," Rebecca said during one of their regular evening walks around the property, "but Emma and Jake are starting to notice the tension. Emma asked me yesterday if you and Sarah were getting divorced." Wayne felt a flicker of genuine pain at this revelation. His children had been his motivation for building everything he owned, and the thought of their family's destruction affecting them cut deeper than Sarah's betrayal. But it also strengthened his resolve. Sarah had chosen to tear apart their family for her own selfish desires. She would face the consequences of that choice. "I'm handling it," Wayne told Rebecca. "But I need you to keep the kids close for the next few weeks. Plan some activities, maybe take them camping or to visit Mom and Dad in San Antonio. Just keep them busy and away from whatever's coming." Rebecca's eyes searched her brother's face, reading the determination and cold anger she remembered from their childhood, when Wayne had protected her from bullies and their father's drinking. "Wayne, whatever you're planning will be exactly what they deserve," Wayne finished. Nothing more, nothing less. The following week brought the opportunity Wayne had been orchestrating. Greg called Sarah with explosive news. Wayne had agreed to invest $2 million in the cryptocurrency venture, but wanted to move quickly to avoid regulatory scrutiny. The investment would go through Fry Digital Ventures, and Greg needed someone he trusted to help coordinate the technical aspects of the deal. Sarah's pulse quickened as she recognized the magnitude of the opportunity. $2 million would be more than enough for her and Cameron to disappear together, assuming they could find a way to access even a portion of it. She immediately contacted Cameron, who saw the same possibilities and began developing a plan to position himself as a technical consultant for the investment. But Wayne was already 3 moves ahead. The investment was real, the money was real, and the cryptocurrency algorithm was functional enough to pass initial scrutiny. What Sarah and Cameron couldn't know was that every aspect of the deal was designed to expose their intentions while giving Wayne legal and financial leverage over both of them. As August approached, all the pieces were moving into position. Wayne had built his trap with the same attention to detail he brought to his most complex construction projects. Soon, it would be time to spring it, and when he did, both Sarah and Cameron would discover that they'd been outmaneuvered by a man who never fought fair when the stakes involved his family's destruction. The foundation was solid, the structure was rising, and Wayne Fry was about to demonstrate why crossing him was the kind of mistake that people spent the rest of their lives regretting. Chapter 5. The framework expands. The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a sweltering August night. Wayne was already awake, reviewing contracts in his home office, when his phone rang with Rebecca's panicked voice. "Wayne, something's wrong with Tommy. He called me screaming about holes in the backyard, something about being buried alive. I can't find him anywhere." Wayne's blood ran cold. His 8-year-old nephew Tommy was the light of the family, a curious boy who followed Wayne around construction sites, asking endless questions about how things were built. The idea of someone threatening him sent murderous rage coursing through Wayne's veins. "Where's his mother?" Wayne demanded, already moving toward his truck. "That's the thing. Rebecca's car is running in the driveway, but she's not here. Her purse is inside. Her phone is on the kitchen counter. It's like she just vanished." Wayne's mind raced as he drove the short distance to Rebecca's house. This felt wrong, too convenient, too perfectly timed to coincide with his plans for Sarah and Cameron. As he pulled into Rebecca's driveway, his headlights illuminated something that made his tactical mind immediately shift into high alert. Fresh holes dotting the backyard, each about 3 feet deep and 2 feet wide. Too small for graves, but large enough to hide something or someone. Roberto arrived minutes later, his security training evident as he surveyed the scene with professional efficiency. The holes are recent, he reported. Dug within the last few hours. But look at this. He pointed to tire tracks in the soft earth. 2 vehicles. One matches Rebecca's Honda, but the other is larger. SUV maybe. Wayne's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your nephew is safe. Your sister is safe. But their continued well-being depends on your cooperation. Details to follow. The implications hit Wayne like a physical blow. Someone had discovered his investigation into Sarah and Cameron. Someone had decided to strike first, using his family as leverage. But who? And how much did they know? The answer came 40 minutes later in the form of another text containing a single photograph. Tommy and Rebecca, both clearly alive but frightened, sitting in what appeared to be a construction trailer. The background showed concrete walls and industrial lighting that Wayne recognized immediately. It was one of his own job sites. There at the downtown project, Wayne told Roberto, his voice deadly calm despite the fury building inside him. The Meridian Tower site. Roberto was already moving toward his vehicle. Could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, Wayne replied. But they made a critical error. They brought my family into this, and they're using my own property to do it. That means they don't know me as well as they think they do. The drive downtown took 20 minutes through empty streets, giving Wayne time to think through the tactical situation. Someone had clearly been watching his investigation of Sarah and Cameron, had anticipated his moves, and decided to gain leverage by threatening his family. But the choice of location suggested either incredible arrogance or a fundamental misunderstanding of who they were dealing with. The Meridian Tower construction site was Wayne's most ambitious project, 40 stories of mixed-use development that would reshape Austin's skyline. More importantly, it was also the most heavily monitored and security-conscious site in his portfolio. Every entrance was covered by cameras. Every tool and piece of equipment was GPS tracked, and the entire perimeter was wired with motion sensors that Roberto's team monitored 24 hours a day. Whoever took them had access to the site, Roberto observed as they approached the security fence. The cameras should have caught everything. They had. The security footage revealed a stunning betrayal that cut Wayne more deeply than Sarah's affair ever could. The kidnappers hadn't broken into the site. They'd been let in by someone with legitimate access. Someone Wayne trusted. The surveillance video showed Gene Davies, Wayne's project foreman and a man he'd considered a friend for over a decade, opening the main gate at 2:15 a.m. Gene had worked for Wayne since the early days, had been trusted with keys to every property and access to every project. He'd eaten dinner at Wayne's table, had celebrated Christmas with the family, had been Emma's godfather. But the video also revealed something else. Gene wasn't working alone. As Rebecca's Honda followed Gene's truck onto the site, Wayne could see a third figure in the passenger seat of Gene's vehicle. Someone Gene was taking orders from, someone who'd been planning this operation with the kind of inside knowledge that could only come from months of careful observation. The third figure stepped out of the truck under the construction lights, and Wayne's world tilted on its axis. It was Sarah. His wife hadn't just been having an affair and planning to steal from him. She'd been orchestrating a systematic plan to destroy everything he'd built, using his own employees and his own family as weapons against him. The holes in Rebecca's backyard, the midnight kidnapping, the choice of his construction site, it was all designed to demonstrate that Wayne's empire could be turned against him by someone who knew its every weakness. But Sarah had made the same mistake that every opponent Wayne had ever faced eventually made. She'd assumed that Wayne Frey's greatest strength was his wealth and his connections. She'd failed to understand that his true power lay in his absolute ruthlessness when defending what mattered to him, and his willingness to sacrifice everything, including his own life, to protect his family. "What's the plan?" Roberto asked, checking his weapon as they prepared to enter the site. Wayne's smile was colder than anything Roberto had seen in their years of friendship. "The plan is simple. We're going to show my wife and her allies what happens when you threaten a Fry family member. And when we're done, everyone involved in this will understand why crossing me was the last mistake they'll ever make." The trap Sarah thought she'd set was about to become her own destruction, and Wayne was going to enjoy every moment of it. Chapter 6. Structural Integrity. Wayne and Roberto approached the Meridian Tower site with the methodical precision of soldiers entering enemy territory. Wayne had built this project from the ground up, knew every corridor and stairwell, every blind spot and vantage point. If Sarah thought using his own construction site against him was clever, She was about to learn the difference between knowing a building's blueprints and understanding its soul. There on the 15th floor, Roberto reported, monitoring the GPS trackers embedded in the construction equipment. 3 vehicles on site, Rebecca's Honda, Jean's truck, and a black Escalade registered to Cameron Springer. So the good doctor was directly involved in kidnapping Wayne's family. That revelation simplified things considerably. Whatever elaborate financial scheme Cameron had been planning was now secondary to a much more primitive crime, one that gave Wayne legal justification for almost any response he chose to make. "How many people are we looking at?" Wayne asked, studying the building's skeleton of steel and concrete through night vision binoculars. "At least 4. Jean, Sarah, Cameron, and 1 unknown. Could be more." Wayne's phone buzzed with another message. "Come alone to the 15th floor. Bring the Fry Digital Ventures account access codes. Your family's safety depends on your cooperation." Roberto read the message over Wayne's shoulder. "They want the cryptocurrency investment. This whole thing is about the $2 million. Wayne almost laughed at the irony. Sarah and Cameron had orchestrated an elaborate kidnapping to steal money from an investment that existed solely to trap them. They'd escalated from adultery and financial manipulation to felony kidnapping, all to access a fund that Wayne had created specifically as bait. "Change of plans," Wayne told Roberto. "I'm going up there, but not the way they expect. And you're going to give me exactly 12 minutes before you call on the cavalry." Wayne had designed the Meridian Tower with security in mind, including access routes that wouldn't appear on any blueprint given to contractors or suppliers. A service elevator connected the basement level directly to key floors, bypassing the main construction areas entirely. More importantly, Wayne had insisted on installing temporary security cameras throughout the building, cameras that Gene Davies didn't know about because they'd been installed by Roberto's team without going through normal construction channels. As Wayne made his way through the building's darkened interior, Roberto fed him real-time intelligence through an encrypted radio system. 4 targets confirmed. Tommy and Rebecca are in the northeast corner, secured but unharmed. Sarah and Cameron are near the south windows. Jean's maintaining watch at the main elevator. Wayne's rage had crystallized into something cold and focused. These people had threatened his nephew, terrorized his sister, and turned his own employee against him. They'd crossed every line that mattered to him, violated every principle that governed his life. Now they would learn what that meant. The service elevator deposited Wayne on the 14th floor, 1 level below his targets. Using construction access ladders, he moved silently through the building's steel framework until he had visual contact with the operation. Through gaps in the temporary flooring, he could see Tommy and Rebecca tied to chairs in what would eventually be a conference room. His nephew appeared frightened but unharmed, while Rebecca was clearly fighting back tears and rage in equal measure. 20 feet away, Sarah was arguing with Cameron in urgent whispers. Even from a distance, Wayne could read their body language. The stress fractures in their partnership were already showing. Kidnapping was a significant escalation from adultery and financial fraud, one that required a level of criminal commitment Cameron clearly wasn't prepared for. "This wasn't the plan," Cameron was saying, his surgeon's hands shaking as he gestured toward Tommy and Rebecca. "We were supposed to leverage the investment information, not commit felonies." "The plan changed when Wayne got suspicious," Sarah replied, her voice carrying a hardness Wayne had never heard before. "My husband is smarter than you gave him credit for. The only way we get what we need is by forcing his hand." Wayne had heard enough. Moving carefully through the construction framework, he positioned himself directly above Sarah and Cameron while Roberto began his approach from the main elevator. The next few minutes would determine whether Wayne's family survived this night intact, and whether Sarah and Cameron lived to regret their choices. But as Wayne prepared to act, a new sound echoed through the building. Footsteps on the stairwell, multiple sets, moving with military precision. Roberto's voice crackled through the radio with urgent news that changed everything. "Wayne, we've got a problem. There are 6 additional vehicles approaching the site. No lights, moving in formation. This wasn't just about the money. Someone's been using Sarah and Cameron as pawns in a much bigger game." Wayne's blood ran cold as he realized the truth. The kidnapping, the financial manipulation, even Sarah's affair, it had all been orchestrated by someone else, someone who understood Wayne's business empire well enough to target its weaknesses systematically. Someone who'd been planning this operation for months, maybe years. As armed figures began flowing into the building, Wayne understood that he'd been outmaneuvered by an opponent he hadn't even known existed. But he also knew something his enemies didn't. Wayne Fry had spent a lifetime preparing for wars he hoped he'd never have to fight. Tonight, those preparations would either save his family or destroy everything he'd built trying. The real battle was just beginning. Chapter 7. The Siege. The armed figures moving through Wayne's building weren't random criminals. They moved with too much precision, too much coordination. As Wayne watched from his concealed position in the steel framework, he counted 8 individuals in tactical gear spreading through the 15th floor with military efficiency. Roberto's voice crackled through the encrypted radio. "Wayne, I've got eyes on the exterior. These aren't amateurs. Professional gear, professional movement. Someone spent serious money on this operation." Wayne's mind raced through the implications. Sarah and Cameron's kidnapping plot had been cover for something much larger, something that required this level of manpower and coordination. But what could his construction business possess that would justify such an elaborate operation? The answer came when the team leader removed his helmet, revealing a face Wayne recognized from security briefings. Alan Platt, a former military contractor who'd been linked to several high-profile corporate espionage cases. Platt had been hired by someone with deep pockets and specific intelligence about Wayne's business operations. "Mr. Fry," Platt called out, his voice echoing through the concrete space. "I know you're in the building. We have your family, and we have something you want to see. Come out, and we can resolve this like civilized people." Wayne remained silent, using the time to assess his tactical situation. 8 armed professionals against 1 construction executive and a security consultant didn't suggest favorable odds through direct confrontation. But Wayne had advantages they couldn't anticipate: intimate knowledge of the building's layout, control of its systems, and allies they didn't know existed. "Wayne," Roberto's voice was urgent. "I'm seeing movement on 3 more floors. They're not just here for Tommy and Rebecca. They're searching the entire building." That revelation crystallized Wayne's understanding of the situation. Someone knew about the advanced construction techniques he'd been developing, the proprietary building systems that gave Fry Construction its competitive advantage. This wasn't just about money or revenge. It was industrial espionage on a scale that would cripple his business and destroy everything he'd built. But Wayne had prepared for this possibility. The Meridian Tower wasn't just his most ambitious project. It was also his most heavily defended. Hidden throughout the building were security measures that went far beyond standard construction site protection. "Roberto, initiate lockdown protocol 7, Wayne commanded. "Wayne, that's going to trap everyone in the building, including us. That's the point. They came here to steal from me. Let's make sure they have plenty of time to reconsider that decision." Lockdown Protocol 7 was Wayne's insurance policy against exactly this kind of threat. With a few keystrokes on his phone, he activated systems that sealed every exit, disabled all elevators except the one he controlled, and turned the building's construction lights into a strobing pattern that would disorient anyone not wearing the specialized glasses Wayne and Roberto carried. The effect was immediate and devastating. Platt's team, suddenly trapped in a building that had become a maze of flashing lights and sealed passages, lost their tactical advantage entirely. Their professional coordination collapsed into confusion as they struggled to adapt to an environment that Wayne controlled completely. "That was a mistake, Fry," Platt's voice called out, now strained with the first hint of uncertainty. "You've trapped your own family in here with us." Wayne moved through the steel framework with predatory silence, using his knowledge of the building's layout to position himself above Platt's location. From his vantage point, he could see that Sarah had moved away from Cameron, apparently realizing that she'd been used as a pawn in someone else's game. "Let me tell you something about mistakes," Wayne called out, his voice carrying through the construction space with absolute authority. "The mistake was thinking you could use my family against me. The mistake was believing you could steal from me on my own property. And the biggest mistake was not understanding that I've been preparing for this conversation for my entire career." Wayne's phone buzzed with a text from a number he recognized: Luke Higgins, his accountant, sending coordinates that indicated Luke was positioned in the building's basement with additional support. The cavalry Wayne had been preparing was already in position. But the most important message came from Emma, his 16-year-old daughter, whose text simply read, "Dad, We're safe. Uncle Roberto got us out through the service tunnels. Give them hell. Wayne's family was secure. Now he could focus on the tactical problem of 8 armed professionals who'd made the mistake of entering his domain with hostile intentions. As Platt's team struggled with the disorienting lights and sealed exits, Wayne began implementing the second phase of his defensive plan. The Meridian Tower had been designed with multiple redundant systems, including construction elevators that could be operated independently of the main building controls. Using his master access codes, Wayne began methodically isolating Platt's team into separate sections of the building, turning their tactical formation into scattered individuals fighting an environment they couldn't control. Your move, Platt, Wayne announced. But you should know, I didn't build this place just to house offices. I built it to be impregnable, and you're about to find out what that means. The siege had begun, but Wayne Fry was no longer the target. He was the hunter, and his prey had walked willingly into the most sophisticated trap he'd ever constructed. Chapter 8: The Collapse. With his family safe and Platt's team scattered throughout the building, Wayne could focus on the systematic destruction of his enemies. But first, he needed to understand who had orchestrated this operation and why they believed Wayne's construction technology was worth this level of risk. The answer came from Sarah herself, her voice carrying through the building's intercom system as she attempted to negotiate her way out of a situation that had spiraled far beyond her control. Wayne, this wasn't supposed to happen like this. Sarah's voice was strained with panic and guilt. They told me it was just about the money, about getting what I deserved after 15 years of marriage. I never signed up for kidnapping or armed assault. Wayne activated the building's communication system, his voice reaching every floor simultaneously. Sarah, you signed up for this the moment you decided to betray our family. But you're right about one thing. This was never just about money. Someone's been using you to get to me, and I want to know who. The building's security cameras, now under Wayne's complete control, revealed that Platt's team had split into 3 groups attempting to regain tactical coordination. But the flashing lights and sealed passages had disrupted their equipment and communication, turning professional soldiers into confused individuals struggling with an environment that seemed designed to defeat them. Which, of course, it was. Roberto's voice crackled through Wayne's earpiece. Wayne, I've got movement in the basement. Someone's trying to access the building's foundation systems. If they're after your construction technology, that's where they'd find the most valuable information. Wayne's blood ran cold. Hidden in the Meridian Tower's foundation were the prototypes for advanced building techniques that represented years of research and development. Seismic dampening systems, revolutionary concrete formulations, and structural engineering innovations that gave Wayne's buildings unprecedented strength and durability. If competitors gained access to that technology, it would eliminate Fry Construction's competitive advantage and potentially ruin him financially. Secure the basement, Wayne commanded. Whatever it takes. But as Wayne moved through the building to confront the threat to his technology, he discovered something that changed his understanding of the entire operation. Security footage revealed that the person attempting to access the foundation systems wasn't one of Platt's mercenaries. It was Cameron Springer, who'd apparently been given specific instructions about what to steal and where to find it. Cameron wasn't just a cardiologist having an affair with a wealthy man's wife. He was a corporate spy with medical credentials that provided perfect cover for infiltrating Austin's business community. His pattern of targeting wealthy wives wasn't about financial gain. It was about gathering intelligence on their husbands' business operations. Wayne, Roberto's voice was urgent. I found a client. Cameron's been feeding information to Dwayne Roberson Construction. They've been planning to steal your technology and destroy your business simultaneously. Dwayne Roberson, Wayne's oldest competitor and the one contractor in Texas who'd consistently underbid Fry Construction on major projects. Roberson had spent years losing contracts to Wayne's superior technology and innovative methods. Now he'd apparently decided that if he couldn't compete fairly, he'd steal what he needed and eliminate Wayne in the process. The revelation triggered a cold fury in Wayne that went beyond anything he'd felt about Sarah's affair. Roberson had turned Wayne's marriage into a weapon, had manipulated Sarah's dissatisfaction to gain access to classified business information, and had been willing to kidnap Wayne's family to complete his industrial espionage operation. But Roberson had made a critical error. He'd underestimated Wayne's willingness to defend his empire through any means necessary. "Roberto, initiate Protocol 9, Wayne commanded. "Wayne, that's exactly what it needs to be." Protocol 9 was Wayne's nuclear option, a system he'd hoped never to use. Hidden throughout the Meridian Tower were controlled demolition charges, installed under the guise of future renovation planning, but actually designed to bring down specific sections of the building if it were ever compromised by hostile forces. Wayne wasn't going to destroy the entire building. He wasn't a terrorist. But he could collapse the basement level where Cameron was attempting to steal his technology, and he could seal the upper floors where Platt's team was trapped, creating a situation where his enemies would have to choose between surrender and entombment. As Wayne's finger hovered over the activation codes, Sarah's voice came through the intercom one final time. "Wayne, please. I know I've destroyed everything between us, but don't let innocent people die because of my mistakes." Wayne paused, recognizing that his wife's betrayal had led to this moment, but also acknowledging that she was right about the consequences of his next decision. If he triggered Protocol 9, he would likely kill several people, including Cameron and potentially some of Platt's mercenaries who were following orders rather than making strategic decisions. But Wayne Fry had spent his entire life building things, creating structures that would stand for generations and provide foundations for other people's dreams. The idea of watching his life's work be stolen and destroyed by men who lacked the vision and dedication to create their own success was more than he could tolerate. "This is Wayne Fry," he announced through the building's communication system. "You have 60 seconds to surrender and exit through the service elevator. Anyone still attempting to steal from me or threaten my family after that deadline will face the consequences of their choices." The countdown had begun, and Wayne's enemies would soon discover that some men were willing to destroy what they'd built rather than watch it be stolen by those who hadn't earned it. Chapter 9, Foundation. 57 seconds. Wayne watched through security monitors as panic spread through the building. Platt's mercenaries, trained to handle combat situations but unprepared for the psychological pressure of impending structural collapse, began abandoning their positions and moving toward the service elevator Wayne had designated as the only exit route. Cameron Springer, still in the basement attempting to download Wayne's proprietary technology, continued working with the desperate focus of a man who understood that failure meant professional and personal destruction. He'd apparently been promised a substantial payoff for delivering Wayne's construction secrets, enough to disappear permanently and start a new life somewhere Dwayne Roberson's influence couldn't protect him. But Sarah had moved toward the elevator, her survival instincts overriding whatever loyalty she felt toward Cameron or the operation that had consumed her marriage. 43 seconds. Roberto's voice crackled through Wayne's earpiece. "Wayne, this is your last chance to reconsider. Once you trigger those charges, there's no going back. You'll be a different man after this." Wayne understood Roberto's concern. Killing people, even people who'd threatened his family and stolen from his business, would change him fundamentally. But Wayne had spent his entire life making difficult decisions, choosing between competing priorities and accepting responsibility for the consequences. "I've been a different man since the moment they threatened Tommy," Wayne replied. "Everything after that is just settling accounts." 31 seconds. Through the security cameras, Wayne watched Cameron finally realize that his escape route had been compromised. The basement access Wayne had allowed him to use was now sealed, leaving Cameron trapped with the very technology he'd been trying to steal. Poetic justice, Wayne thought, for a man who'd spent months infiltrating Wayne's family to gain access to his business secrets. 28 seconds. Sarah reached the service elevator and began frantically pressing the call button, apparently believing she could evacuate the building before Wayne's deadline expired. But Wayne controlled that elevator, and he wasn't ready to let his wife escape the consequences of her choices. Through the elevator's internal camera, Wayne could see Sarah's face as she realized the elevator wasn't responding. Fear, guilt, and a growing understanding that Wayne's forgiveness was no longer a possibility. She'd spent months planning her betrayal, had recruited allies and developed strategies to steal from him. Now she was discovering that Wayne's capacity for strategic thinking exceeded her own. 15 seconds. Wayne's phone buzzed with a text from Dwayne Roberson himself. "Fry, let's discuss this like businessmen. No need for anyone to get hurt. I have a proposal that benefits everyone." Wayne almost smiled at the irony. After orchestrating months of espionage, manipulation, and kidnapping, Roberson wanted to negotiate like civilized competitors. But Wayne had learned early in his career that some people only respected strength, only understood consequences delivered with absolute finality. 10 seconds. Cameron's voice echoed through the building's intercom system, probably having gained access through the basement's emergency communication panel. Wayne, I have information about other operations targeting your business. People who make me look like an amateur. Let me live, and I'll tell you everything. 5 seconds. Wayne's finger moved toward the activation codes, then stopped. Not because of Cameron's offer. Wayne could discover his other enemies through his own resources, but because of a realization that had been building throughout this entire confrontation. He didn't need to kill these people to destroy them. Wayne deactivated the demolition sequence and activated a different protocol entirely, one that would be far more devastating to his enemies than quick death. Instead of collapsing the basement, Wayne triggered a different system. Industrial-grade concrete pumps that began filling the basement level with quick-setting cement. Cameron would have perhaps 90 seconds to escape through emergency ventilation shafts before the basement became a permanent tomb for Dwayne Roberson's espionage operation. Meanwhile, Wayne activated magnetic locks throughout the upper floors, trapping Platt's mercenaries in individual sections of the building while automatically contacting law enforcement with detailed evidence of their criminal activities. By the time police arrived, Wayne would have comprehensive documentation of industrial espionage, kidnapping, and armed assault, evidence that would ensure lengthy prison sentences for everyone involved. But Wayne's masterstroke was reserved for Sarah. As she stood trapped in the service elevator, Wayne activated the building's communication system one final time. Sarah, you're going to walk out of this building tonight. You're going to return to our house, pack your belongings, and disappear from our lives forever. You'll receive exactly nothing from our divorce. No money, no property, no contact with our children. If you ever attempt to contact me or our family again, the evidence I've compiled about your role in tonight's operation will be delivered to the district attorney within the hour. Wayne paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before delivering his final verdict. You chose to destroy our family for money and a man who was using you as a pawn in someone else's game. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice for the rest of your life. Alone. The elevator doors opened, and Sarah stumbled out into the Austin night, her marriage and her future destroyed by her own betrayals. Epilogue. 6 months later, Wayne stood in his office overlooking the completed Meridian Tower, now the most secure commercial building in Texas and a monument to his refusal to be defeated by his enemies' schemes. Cameron Springer had been sentenced to 15 years for corporate espionage and kidnapping. Dwayne Roberson's construction company had collapsed under the weight of criminal investigations and civil lawsuits. Alan Platt and his mercenaries were serving prison sentences that would keep them off the streets for decades. Sarah had disappeared entirely, leaving Austin the night of the confrontation and never returning. Their divorce had been finalized in absentia, with Wayne retaining full custody of Emma and Jake. Neither child had asked about their mother's whereabouts, apparently understanding that some betrayals severed family bonds permanently. Gene Davies, Wayne's former foreman who'd betrayed him for money, had been dealt with through Wayne's network of contractors and suppliers. No one would hire Gene in Texas construction again, effectively ending his career and forcing him to leave the state to find work. Tommy and Rebecca had recovered from their ordeal, though Rebecca had developed a deeper appreciation for her brother's protective instincts and the lengths he would go to defend their family. Tommy, resilient as only children can be, had returned to following Wayne around construction sites and asking endless questions about building techniques. Roberto approached Wayne's desk with the morning's security briefing, a ritual that had become more important since the Meridian Tower incident had demonstrated the level of threats Wayne's success could attract. Any new problems? Wayne asked. Actually, the opposite, Roberto replied with a slight smile. Word's gotten around about what happened to the people who crossed you. Competitors are being much more respectful, and we haven't had a single attempt at industrial espionage since then. Wayne nodded, unsurprised. Fear was a powerful motivator, and the construction industry had always operated on a reputation-based economy. His handling of Sarah, Cameron, and their allies had sent a clear message. Wayne Fry protected what was his with absolute ruthlessness, and crossing him carried consequences that extended far beyond immediate punishment. Emma knocked on the office door, entering with the confidence of a young woman who'd inherited her father's strength and strategic mind. At 17, she was already showing interest in the family business and the kind of leadership qualities that suggested the Fry legacy would continue into the next generation. "Dad, Jake and I want to talk to you about something," she said, settling into the chair across from Wayne's desk. "What's on your mind? We know what Mom did. We know why she's gone and why she's not coming back. And we want you to know that we understand why you handled it the way you did." Wayne felt a surge of pride and pain in equal measure. His children had been forced to grow up quickly because of Sarah's betrayals, but they'd emerged from the experience with a clear understanding of loyalty, family, and the importance of protecting what mattered most. "Your mother made choices that destroyed our family," Wayne said carefully. "I made choices to protect what was left. Sometimes those are the only options available." Emma nodded, her expression showing the kind of maturity that came from witnessing adult consequences firsthand. "We get it, Dad, and we want you to know that we're proud of you for fighting for us." Jake appeared in the doorway, now 15 and showing signs of inheriting Wayne's build and intensity. "Emma's right. You did what you had to do. We're family, and family protects each other." Wayne looked at his children, recognizing that Sarah's betrayal had inadvertently strengthened the bonds between the family members who'd remained loyal. Emma and Jake understood now that their father wasn't just a successful businessman. He was a man who would sacrifice everything to protect the people he loved. But they also understood that Wayne's protection came with expectations. Loyalty was absolute in the Fry family, and betrayal carried consequences that lasted forever. Sarah had learned that lesson too late. Wayne's children had learned it early enough to shape the rest of their lives. "What are your plans for this afternoon?" Wayne asked, changing the subject to lighter matters. "Tommy wants help building a treehouse," Jake replied. "I figured we could work on it together, maybe teach him some basic construction techniques." Wayne smiled, recognizing the continuation of family traditions that connected past and future. Tommy would grow up understanding that building things required skill, dedication, and the kind of long-term thinking that separated successful people from those who expected easy victories. As his children left to work on Tommy's treehouse, Wayne returned to studying blueprints for his next project, a residential development that would provide affordable housing for Austin's growing population. It was the kind of construction that wouldn't generate massive profits, but would create lasting value for the community. Wayne Fry had learned long ago that true success came from building things that lasted, whether they were businesses, buildings, or families. He'd also learned that protecting those achievements required the kind of strength that most people couldn't understand or accept. Sarah had discovered that Wayne's love for his family was absolute, but so was his response to betrayal. She'd chosen to test both, and had learned that some men would rather destroy everything they built than watch it be stolen by those who hadn't earned it. Now Wayne was building again, creating new structures and opportunities while ensuring that the lessons from Sarah's betrayal would protect his family for generations to come. Because that's what Fry men did. They built things that lasted, and they defended those things with whatever force was necessary. The foundation was solid. The structure was sound. And Wayne Fry was exactly where he belonged, creating the future while ensuring that the past's mistakes would never be repeated.